Today's daf we're going to be learning is Ketubot Daf Yomi. We're going to start with a review of what we finished yesterday and move on from there. So we saw a Braita that said, we were talking about a Mishnah that witnesses said, these are our signatures. And since we have no other proof of otherwise, we believe them when they say, yes, these are our signatures, but we were forced into this. We were not false witnesses. We were ketanim, right? Or we were disqualified witnesses. So now, the Braita says, they can't disqualify their own testimony. So the rabbis match what we saw in our Mishnah, they're believed. To which the Gemara said, we understand the rabbi's opinion because that's what we've been dealing with. Since they're the ones who said that they were witnesses, it's only because of them that we even think that the shtar is a valid shtar. It's a valid document, therefore we believe them to undo it. But Rabbi Meir, we don't understand. So when it comes to Edut, we said, well, if they say Psule Edut, there's no way that the Malva would have accepted a disqualified witness. So for sure, it must be that they're valid witnesses, and that's why we don't believe them. If they were minors, also Rish Lakish says, no minors, we don't ever let minors sign on a document, so it can't be that. And now we're up to the last part, starting in line 2 of Daf Yomi. Ela anusim my time. Why aren't they believed to say we were forced into it? Rav Chisda says, Kasaval Rabbi Meir holds that Eidim she'amru lahem chitmu shekel va'al targu yargu va'al yachtimu shekel. Fascinating line. In a minute, we're going to say this is totally not true, but Rabbi Meir said, Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Meir must hold that when witnesses are told sign or we'll kill you, sign here, right? Lie for this testimony or we're going to kill you, you should get killed and you shouldn't sign. Basically, this is what we call limsor nefesh, okay? Just let yourself get killed. Don't ever do this, which means there's no way we believe these witnesses where they say, this is what Rabbi Meir is going to say. We don't believe these witnesses when they say we were forced into it, someone put a gun to our heads, because they're basically, this is, we go back to Ana Damasim Atzmo Rasha. People wouldn't incriminate themselves in court, and it's forbidden to do that. You can't sign because someone put a gun to your head. To which Rava says, what are you talking about? I'm really Rava. Hashtu ilu ata l'kaman le'imluche. He says it in such an interesting way. If those people had come to us and asked us, or what should we do in this situation? Someone told me if I don't sign by tomorrow morning, they're going to kill me. Amrina lu zilu chatumu v'lo titkatlun. We say to them, go sign and don't get yourself killed. Damar mar, because it was stated, ein lecha davar shomei b'fnei pikuach nefesh. Nothing stands in the face of your life. Your life is more important than anything. The only time you're supposed to give your life for something is the famous 3, Ela, Avodat Kochavim, V'giloi Arayot, U'shpichut Damim Bilvad. Only if someone says go worship idols or go sleep with this person who you're forbidden to, right? Go marry your sister, or Shpichut Damim, or murder. That's it. Just those 3. But anything else, okay, we'll get to this in Sanhedrin. Why specifically those 3? Where is it derived from? But basically, in this case, if they signed, they didn't do anything wrong. Amrina lehu, amai chatmitu, what we're going to say to them, why did you sign? And you're a terrible person? Of course not. This is what we tell them to do. So that's not a good reason. So therefore, they explain, Ela Tama de Rabbi Meir, Kid de Rav Huna. So Rav explains the reason for Rabbi Meir must be, Kid de Rav Huna Amarav, like Rav Huna said the name of Rav, the Amar Rav Huna Amarav, Modet b'shtar shektavo, ein sarich lekaimo. If the love, the person who borrows the money, admits that this is the shtar, then it doesn't anymore need kiyum shtar. It doesn't need the witnesses to prove. It doesn't need the witnesses to say these are our signatures, or we don't need someone to validate the witnesses' signatures. So what the connection of this is not exactly clear. Some people say that's similar to this case, but we'll go with a different interpretation, which basically says that according to this, it's also not the most simple answer, but when Rabbi Meir says they're not believed, it must be a case where the love admitted that it was his shtar. He had signed this document, okay, or he had this written up for a loan. In which case, you don't need the signatures of the witnesses. In which case, you don't need the witnesses to tell you. In other words, there's no pesha asaru a pesha itil here, because the witnesses aren't believed because you don't need them to verify their signatures. Their signatures are valid anyway. Now that they're trying to mess up the shtar, we don't believe them that they're messing up the shtar because we have a fully valid document. Okay? And then it's more like the case in our Mishnah of Im Yesh Edim then we're not going to believe them, right? If there's witnesses to verify their signatures, or in this case, the malveh, the loveh, the borrower himself said, this is my shtar, I did borrow this money, then it is obviously the loveh is trying to say that I paid you back, but the shtar already becomes valid, and therefore the witnesses are no longer believed anymore. They don't have this believability because they're the ones even telling us that the shtar is valid, and now they're trying to undo it. This is more like they signed. So if they had signed at the time and they were invalid, they should have said so when they signed. They shouldn't have signed in the first place. Okay, Gufa. Now we're going to go back to this line that Rav Huna just said. Amar Rav Huna Amarav, Modeh b'shtar shekatvo ein tzarich lekaymo. Amar le Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Ganva ginuve lamalach. Why are you sneaking around? Just say it like it is. Isfira like Rabbi Meir. If we just said that fits in with Rabbi Meir. So if you really want to say you hold like Rabbi Meir, Ein malacha ki Rabbi Meir, you should say the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. So Amrale, he says no. So then his response is Umar hechi sfira le. Why are you giving me problems? Who do you hold like? Is it because you hold like Chachamim? That you're trying to say you hold like Rabbi Meir, and that's where you got this statement from, and therefore you want to basically say, but I disagree because I hold like, right, and as you should have said, I hold like Rabbi Meir, and that way it would have been obvious that whoever holds like Chachamim won't accept your statement. So he says, Umar hechi sfira le. Who do you hold like? Do you hold like Chachamim, and that's why you're bothering me? Amar le ki atu lekam ledina amrina lehu zilu kaimu shtaraychu v'chuta ledina. When they come before me to court, even if the loveh admits that this is his document, I still make them validate the signatures because I think the signatures need validation, which means also that in our case, if the witnesses themselves, if the ones who signed themselves validated the signatures, they'll be believed mishum hapesh shasar or hapesh yitir because we do need it. It's not enough to have the loveh validate the document. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Now we're going to talk about other types of shtarot. Okay, our Mishnah and the Braita talked about a case where somebody claims, yes, these are my signatures, but something. So now we're going to have other types of claims like that. Okay, where there's a document that says you owe me money, but you claim it's something else. Ha'omel, we're going to see exactly who claims. We don't know. It's part of the problem here. Ha'omel shtar amana huze. If they say it's a shtar amana, a document of trust, what does that mean? So there's many different interpretations in the commentaries of what it means. One is to say that it's a document. I was planning to loan you money. You were planning to borrow money, but you're not ready yet to borrow the money. But we got it all ready. We decided, let's just get ahead of ourselves. So this way we can have it all done when you need the money. And we wrote up the shtar. And in fact, you even gave it to me, which is a little bit strange. And that's why it's called a document of trust, because you must trust me and assume I'm not going to. Why is it strange? Because if I have an IOU that says you owe me money, well, I can claim it at any point, even though I actually never gave you the money. So it must be you trust me. And you trust me that I'm not going to claim it. Try to take the money from you until we actually go ahead with the loan. But we even got witnesses to sign on it so that it's all ready to go. So it's almost like sometimes you get a check signed, right? Even though you're not giving the check yet. So it's like a done deal. Even though there really was no loan, I never gave you the money. So if you say it's a shtar amana, so I go, let's say, go get the money, and then you claim it's a shtar amana, eino ne'eman. You're not believed to say that's not a real shtar. Deka'amarman. So who's the one who said this is a shtar amana that they're not believed? And you'll see why they don't like what I just said. Ilema deka'amar loveh. If it's that the loveh said it, pshita kol kamine. If a loveh was believed to say this is a shtar amana, when any time a malveh, a borrower, a lender took out a document and said, hey, you owe me money, and he can claim, oh, it was just a shtar amana. So of course we're not going to believe him. I forgot, by the way, to say that there's two other interpretations of a shtar amana. A second interpretation is the borrower wants to look wealthy. So the borrower goes to me as a friend and says, listen, I'll look wealthy if I can say I borrowed $1 million from you. So will you write out a document that says I borrowed $1 million from you, just so I can look like I have money in my hand? So that's a second interpretation where it's a totally false document. This is a little worse. Okay, we're going to see that the Gemara gives it a very bad rap and says you're basically a bad person if you do this. So the first one, isn't it really like you did something wrong? The second one is really like you did something wrong. Even the first one, look, it leads to problems because you're basically waiving, something in the face of the lender and giving them an opportunity to lie and cheat and basically try to take money. So that's where in interpretation number one, it's a little bit evil. Interpretation number two is just a pure lie. Right? In interpretation number 3, it's really bad because what are you doing? Basically, let's say you owe money to somebody else. So you don't want to pay them back because you don't have the money. So you take out a fake document. You write that I owe Michelle money. And then when they come to pay you, to get paid, you say, oh, look, well, I owe Michelle money. I got to pay her first. And, maybe you change the date and make it, you make up a date that's earlier and say, look, I owe her money first. I'm going to only pay you later. So that's a really forgery that you're using to get out of something else. So if it's the lova, for sure the lova is not believed to just take a perfectly good-looking star and claim it's a star amana. Can't be that's what Rabbi Yehuda is telling us. It's so obvious. Ela dekamar malve, if it's the malve saying it, the one who loaned the money, that, oh, yeah, I have this document. I know it looks like you owe me money, but you don't really. Well, tavala bracha. I mean, either it's true or it's not true, and you're just letting me not pay. I'm just letting you not pay back your money. That's a really nice thing I'm doing. Certainly, we're not going to say I'm not believed. Ela dekamre edim, who's left? Maybe the witnesses said it's a sharmana. That too. If the signatures are validated by somebody else, and now we know why they're bringing this here, for sure they're not believed. That's what our Mishnah said. They're not believed once their signatures are validated to claim, oh, well, this isn't really a good star. And if this is the only way to know their signatures is they claim, yes, this is our signature, but it's a star mana, well, we should believe them. And this says we don't believe them. Rabbi Yehuda said we don't. So we're going to have 3 answers to this question. One's going to say it's the lovet, one's going to say it's the malvet, one's going to say it's the witnesses. So Amar Rabba, lo olam dekamar lovet. Rabba says it really is that the lovet said it, the borrower. Now, why is it not so obvious? Well, the Amar Uchid Rav Huna, the Amar Rav Huna Amarav, modeh b'shtar sheketavo, ein tzarich lekaimo. As soon as the lovet admits that this is a shtar, then we no longer need to validate the signatures. In which case the signatures are valid, in which case you think that it's a valid document, and the lovet is basically saying, I owe you the money. And if the lovet, one second, shtar manao, right, you might have thought, okay, let's look at Rashi for a minute. Kid Rav Huna. Ashmi'ina Rav Yehuda Namiyah. Rav Yehuda is saying the same thing basically that Rav Huna is saying, which is what? The lovet shamar ktavtivu mitzartivu. If the lovet said, I wrote it and I gave it to him, aval shtar amanau, but it's a shtar amana, ein sarich hamalve lachzor ulavi laha'id al chatima. The malve doesn't need to go bring witnesses to validate the signatures, because basically, the ein ne'eman lovela paslo. We assume that a lova is not going to write a shtar unless he really has a shtar. So therefore, just like we assume once he admits it's a shtar, we basically accept it and make him pay the money back, right? It doesn't need kiyum shtarot. So basically here also, once the lova says it, once the lova validated it's a valid document, it's just shtar amana. We don't believe the second part. We basically believe that it's a valid document. He has the power to basically do kiyum shtarot. Once there's kiyum shtarot, right, the kiyum chatimot, the signatures are valid. Once the signatures are valid, there's nowhere to go after that. And that's really what he was trying to tell us. So it's a broader law, not just in this case, but in general. Option number 2, Abaye amar le'olam da'amar malveh. It's that the malveh said it, the lender. Ukigo, now, what's the problem? Tavo alav bracha, we said, if I just say you don't have to pay me back, I'm only doing something bad for me, not for anybody else. Well, Abaye is going to come up with a case where there's somebody else. Ukigon shechav la'achirim. What if I owe money to somebody else? And then what's the issue? Uchid Rabbi Natan, as Rabbi Natan says, and it goes like Rabbi Natan, Ditanya, Rabbi Natan omil, minayim le'noshe b'chavero maneh. If I owe someone else money, but someone owes me money, minayim shemotziim mizeh v'notim lezeh. Right? The person I owe money to can go demand the money, right? Let's say I owe money to Leah, and Rachel owes me money. So Leah can demand the money from Rachel. Okay? Talmud Lomar, where does we get it from? We learn it from Pasuk in the Torah that we can do this. So now we say, very simply, it was a case where I owe money to somebody else. And then I claimed that this document was a shtar mana. It wasn't a real document because Leah wanted to demand it from Rachel. But I say, that document with Rachel, that wasn't a real document. It was a fake document. And then I'm not believed in that case. Okay, next. Rav Ashi amar le'olam teka'amrei edim. It's the witnesses, okay? That's the one that's left. It's a case where their signatures aren't validated from anywhere else. Now, we said before, If their signatures aren't valid, then they should be believed. They're the ones who tell us their signatures are valid. And they're the ones who say, but in the end, it was valid for nothing because it was a fake document. Well, why are they not believed? Da'am k'derav Kahana. Da'am Rav Kahana, and this goes back to something else we learned. Asur lo la'adam sheyesh shtar amana b'toch beito, mishum shenemar al tashkem bo'alecha avla. A person is not allowed to have a shtar amana. And when these Eidim said, we signed an shtar amana, what are they doing? They're basically saying, we did something terrible. Because they learned from the Pasuk, it's Pasuk in Eob, al tashkem bo'alecha avla, don't allow in your tents to dwell misdoings, bad things. This is referring to a shtar amana. You shouldn't have a shtar amana in your house, and you certainly shouldn't sign on it. So what does this mean? Well, if the Eidim go and sign and say, we signed in a shtar amana, that makes them look bad. It's self-incriminating. What do we say? Ein adam osim atzmo rasha. People don't make themselves into bad people. They don't come to court and say, I did something bad. Since shtar amana is bad, according to Rav Kahana, they won't come into court and say that. So if they do, we don't believe them. And based on this, turning out Amud Bet, Amar Rav Sheshet Bereid Rav Idi, Shma Mina Midor Rav Kahana. You can learn from Rav Kahana that Eidim she'amru Amana Yudvarenu. Whatever we said was really not true. Okay, it was this shtar amana or something. Ein emanim. They're not believed. Why? My taima kevan da'avla yiva'avla lo chatme. Can't be that we believe them ever to say that this was amana because they would never, right? It's a bad thing, and since it's a bad thing, they will never make themselves rishayin. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Asur lo la'adam. If we're talking about documents that you're not allowed to have, like shtar amana, we're now going to talk about other ones. Generally, if I loan you money, I keep the shtar. As soon as you pay me back the money, you make sure that the shtar is ripped up. And I certainly can't keep it in my house because if I did, let's say you didn't rip it up, I have to rip it up because otherwise I can basically go back to you and say, hey, listen, you owe me money. So comes Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and he says the following. Asur lo la'adam sheyesh shtar parua b'toch beito, shene'emar al tashkem bo'alecha avla. The same pasuk. Don't leave bad things around in your house, right? Like a shtar parua. Okay, you can't. Even if the lova didn't rip it up, the borrower, you as the lender have to rip up that document. Don't leave it in your house. In Israel, in the name of Rav, they said, this is the beginning of that verse. Now he's going to darshan the two parts of that verse. If there's bad things in your hands, distance yourself from them, right? Put them away from you. This is two kinds. One, the shtar amana that we saw before, and one is a shtar pasim. What's a shtar pasim? Two different interpretations, or at least two, just like the amana. One is the flip of the amana. The amana, according to one interpretation, was that the borrower wants to make himself look wealthy or herself look wealthy by saying, I borrowed $1 million from so-and-so, whatever amount of money. This is the reverse. The lender wants to look wealthy by saying, look, I lent out money to someone. So they make up a document, that's a shtar pasim. Why pasim? Milashon piusim, to appease. I find a friend who's willing to be appeased, and basically say, look, I know we have a friendly relationship. Can you help me out? I need to look wealthy for whatever reason. So can you? Maybe you're trying to get a loan from the bank. So you say, listen, I lent out money to so-and-so. Look, I have money, obviously, and it makes me look wealthy. But obviously, it's just a fake. Another interpretation is, I don't want someone to seize my property. So I basically write it into someone else's name. Okay, this goes on, by the way, with wealthy people, certain, not obviously all wealthy people, but there are certain people who don't want to get taxed or want to avoid or definitely comes up with politicians do things like this, where they write in properties, they add in other people's names so that, it's not, they don't have issues, all sorts of things, reasons someone might do that. So sometimes people do that, right? I say wealthy people because it has to be someone who has property to be doing that with, right? And they're often trying to avoid, let's say, taxes that are incurred by the wealthy. In any case, obviously, most of the world doesn't do this. There's a small minority of people who do it, but we hear about them, right? So you can't write your property, your assets to somebody else as a fake to avoid someone trying to take them from you or whatever reason you're trying to avoid. So now, that's the first part of that pasuk. So those are two interpretations of what pasim are. Where it comes from the word pasim, according to that first interpretation, I'm not really sure. Va'altash, maybe also it's a friend. So you're giving them, milashon piusim, to appease someone who's willing to just be a guinea pig in your little activity there. Va'altash kem bo'alecha avla, zeh shtar parua. Okay, the second part of that pasuk is referring to a shtar that was already given back. So now we have the al tishke ba'olech havla kibishtar parua, it could be shtar amana. So now the Gemara says, Manda amar shtar parua, koshken shtar amana. If you say shtar parua, all the more so you'll say that a shtar amana, because the shtar amana is way worse. But Manda amar shtar amana, but shtar parua lo. Shtar parua is not as bad. Why? While you pay back the loan, you might not have paid me the money it cost for me to get a scribe to write the shtar, and you really owe me that. So it could be I'm leaving it in my hands just until I get the final part of the loan back, which is this part that wasn't really part of the loan, but connected to the loan. So could be that there's a case where shtar parua wouldn't be so bad to leave in your house because you're actually leaving it there for a reason. Itma, another thing we learn from this pasuk. Sefer she'eno muga. If you have a book, meaning a Sefer Torah, that's not edited properly. Some people also say this can apply to a Mishnah or a Gemara. It's not properly edited. Amar Rabbi Ami, keep it in your house for 30 days, up to 30 days so that you fix it. Mikama elach, if you didn't fix it after that, asur l'shahoto, you can't leave it in your house. Mishum shenemar, al tishkem ba'olech havla, because you shouldn't leave things that, again, cause misdoings. If you have a document that's incorrect, people will learn from it, right? You have a Sefer Torah that's incorrect. People might derive the wrong things. Certainly don't want that around. Amar Rav Nachman, Edim sha'amru amana yudvarenu. This is exactly what Rav Sheshet said at the top of this page. If you say, witnesses say, we were just lying, it was fake, ein emanim, because again, they're making themselves into bad people. What if they said moda'ah yudvarenu? We were forced into it, and afterwards we made this declaration, it's just not true. Ein emanim, they're also not believed, because again, their signatures show this is a valid document. However, Mar Rav Ashi disagrees. Mar Rav Ashi amana yudvarenu em nemanim. Amana can never be a good thing, can never be true. It's a fake document. But moda'ah yudvarenu nemanim. My time, you can't write a document of amana, but you can write a regular document. Let's say someone put a gun to someone's head and said, write this document and get witnesses to sign. And you get these witnesses to sign. And then the witnesses afterwards issue a declaration that says, by the way, that document I wrote yesterday or I signed yesterday, I never really meant to do it. Just someone put a gun to my head and I had to write it. So that's actually permitted. So therefore, he says they are believed to say it was done under duress. Now, Rava asked Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, not amana and not moda'ah, neither are believed. But he says the following: what if you said, yes, it was a shtar. I signed on the document, and he sold this property to so and so, but it was under a particular condition, and the condition wasn't met yet. So what do we say? Do we say moda'ah v'amana haynu tamet ka'akre le'shtar? He's basically saying the shtar isn't valid. And hainami ka'akra, and that's why we don't believe him, because the signatures are there and they're valid. V'hainami ka'akra, again, why are they valid? Because he says they're valid. V'hainami ka'akra l'shtar. Also here, he's basically saying, he's uprooting the shtar. He's basically saying the shtar is not true. Because it wasn't right. He didn't fulfill the condition. O Dilma, or do we say, Tanai milta achrita? No, Tanai is something else. Because often people write a document and it's given under condition, and that's what the agent were there for. They were there when it happened, and they can testify that there was a condition, a stipulation. So Amrle, so Rav Nachman answers, Ki atu l'kaman ledina, when people come before me, Amrina lehu, I say to them, Zilu kaimu tanaichu v'chutu ledina. Go and fulfill the condition and then come to court before me. In other words, make sure the condition is filled. He believes that, and then he makes sure that they go through with it. So he actually believes the witnesses when they say it was given upon condition. What if Eid omer t'nai ve'eid omer eno t'nai? What if one witness said it was given under condition, the other witness says, no, it wasn't given under condition, and both say, though, but that's my signature, that's my signature. So Amar Papa says something interesting. Travayu b'shtar ma'al yakam sadu. Both basically said the document is valid, and now you have one saying condition, one saying it wasn't condition. And as without that, one witness usually doesn't hold up to anything. So let's ignore that one witness now, but we're going to split what he says. It's called plagin and dibure. We split. We accept that he says this is my signature. We don't accept that he said it was upon condition because he's the only one who said that. And therefore, right, the one who says Tanai Havalechad is only one. His words, it's a Tanai, is only one person. It doesn't stand up to the two people, which was him and the other guy, who said that this is a valid document. So you have the two signatures that are basically valid now and validated by each of the witnesses. And now you have only one saying it was a condition, so we ignore that. He says, that's ridiculous. You could say the same thing if they both say what? How would it work? Let's say they both say it's a condition. You basically would then say two already validated it, and then we don't accept what comes after to say it's a Tanai. So therefore, in other words, if we view these as two separate things, first they're saying we validate the shtar, then they're saying, but it was under condition, then we never be able to undo it. We never be able to undo if two people already validated the shtar is valid. We don't accept them saying later it was a Tanai, or we might not. So then he says, we don't view it like that. In other words, what's happening? If two come and say, these are our signatures, and then two come and say, but it was the same two say, but it was under condition, we basically view that the condition is undermining the first part of what they said, right? That's the words here. I'm just reading inside. Ela amrinan hani lemi'akar sadutikat. Not that there's two parts. Yes, these are our signatures, but it was conditioned. No, these are our signatures, and yet we signed it while it was under condition, meaning they're undoing what they did before. And therefore, we accept what they say in the end. And therefore, the first one, when it's only one who says it was tonight, he's basically undoing his line that, yes, I signed on this. It's basically saying my signature doesn't mean anything, which means we don't have two people validating the signatures. And therefore, can't be what you're saying. So we can't just split what he says. It's all part of one thing. This is my signature, but I'm saying it's really not. And therefore, there is no two people validating the signatures. And therefore, the Gemara holds like him, Hilchatak Rafuna Bered Rabbi Yoshua. Tanu Rabbanan, bright. Shnayim Chatumim al Ashtar Umetu. Two people signed, and then they died. Ubau Shnayim and Ashuk Vamru. Two people from the Shuk come, and now it's going to be like our Mishnah, except it's two other people saying this about the witnesses. Yadanu Shektav Yadam. We recognize their signatures. Avalanu Simayu, Ktanimayu, Psulei Durayu. But they were forced into it, or they were minors when they signed, or they were disqualified witnesses. Hare elu ne'amanim, they're believed. Im yet, because again, hapesha sal hu hapeshi itil. We wouldn't validate their signatures without this testimony. And while they're saying they're valid, in the same breath, they're saying they're not valid. V'im yesh edim shektav yadam uzeh, but if there's witnesses, like we can know where this is going, just like our others, o shayaktav yadam uzeh mimakom acher, or we had proof that these are their signatures. We have their signatures on record, right? How so? There was a different document with their signatures on it that somebody tried to say this isn't a valid document, and they verified their signatures, and therefore they're on record. Ein elu ne'amanim. We already know this and not believed because it's not a pesha sa'u a peshi til, and therefore we don't allow it. We don't believe them, right? Because again, they already testified, right, that we already have signatures to witnesses. That's already valid. And we basically collect this money as if it's a really valid shtar. But why? There's two witnesses saying it's a valid document. Those are the two that signed. And we have witnesses that their valid signatures are valid. And two witnesses that say, but it was under duress, or they were psulei edut. So this should be what we call edut hakasha, contradictory testimony. We should throw it all out. How can you basically collect the money? So Amar Rav Sheshet Zot Omeret, from the fact that we don't allow this, it must be there's some technical problem here. And it must be that Hakasha Tchilat Hazaman. There's two types of contradictory witnesses in halacha. There's Hakasha. We say you owe the money, right? The other two say it's not a valid document. That's contradictory, right? It is valid, it's not valid. Okay. That's contradictory. That's our case. Then we have Edut Hazama. What's that? And Edut Hakasha, we basically don't know who to believe, so we throw everyone out of court. And we basically go back to status quo. But Hazama is when two witnesses testify, and two witnesses come and say, Imanu ayitem, you were with us on that day that you claimed that you were there. And there's no way you could have gone from one place to the other. And therefore, we know that you're lying. Not because we're disagreeing about the content of what you said. We're disagreeing about the fact that you couldn't possibly have been witnesses. That the Torah allows, either because it's a chidush, it's a special unique halacha, or because it's kind of like they're testifying about them. You have two witnesses saying, you're invalid witnesses, just like we'd accept two witnesses to say you're a psule du, you're a karov, you're a relative or something like that. So we accept two witnesses to say you weren't there at the time that you said because we were with you somewhere else. So now, Hazama has all sorts of rules. We're going to read that right now. But the point is that Hakasha is inherently connected with Hazama. It's like the beginning of Hazama. Beginnings of, to get to Hazama, you could start with Hakasha. Again, how exactly to understand it's a good question, but it means, what it really is trying to say is they're part of one and the same package, even though Hakasha we don't accept and Hazama we do, right? And as Hakasha, we throw everyone out of court. Hazama will basically say the first two are invalid, the second two are right. Well, but the rules have to be the same for all of them, meaning, just like you can't do Edei Hazama if the witnesses are dead. There's no such thing as turning them into Eidim Zomimim if they're already dead. You can't do that. You can't invalidate their testimony once they're dead. So likewise, that's why we don't believe the second two here, because the first two who signed are dead. And you can't invalidate witnesses who are dead. Why is that? Because they can't come and speak up for themselves and come and support your claim. At least that's what it seems to me. So you can't do that, and that's why we believe them. And that's what Rav Sheshet says. You can learn from here that Hakasha must have the same rules as Hazama, and that's why this doesn't work. Wishing everyone a good day, and pick up from here tomorrow.